Hi there and welcome. My name is Michael Kentenich and I'm a Microsoft Technical Trainer. In this video, we delve deeper into the magic of Azure App Service deployment slots and empower you to design robust solutions for your Azure applications. Meet Contoso, a bustling online marketplace for sustainable products. Their website experiences heavy traffic spikes during seasonal sales and product launches. To ensure seamless user experience, Contoso leverages Azure App Service deployment slots. In their deployment pipeline, they maintain separate slots for production, staging, and testing. When rolling out new features or updates, Contoso deploys to the staging slot first. Here, they carefully test functionality and user acceptance, performance, and scalability. Once they are satisfied, they seamlessly swap the staging slot with production, minimizing downtime and avoiding user disruptions. By using deployment slots, Contoso achieves zero downtime deployment. Customers can shop without interruption even during updates. A and B testing. Contoso experiments with new features in a controlled environment before exposing them to all users. And then rollback capabilities. If issues arise, they swiftly revert to the previous version. In this video, we will describe the benefits of using deployment slots, understand how slot swapping operates in App Service, and how you can do manual swap or configure an auto swap. And of course, I will show you how to route traffic manually and automatically to those deployment slots. Depending on the App Service plan that you choose, you have deployment slots available. With them, you have separate target environments like test, staging, production, whatever you need. Each deployment slot is a complete environment on its own. It has its own host name, its own URL, FTP credentials, all you need to deploy your latest version or specific version to it. You can also add configurations for each of these slots individually. With any App Service plan tier, you get a default production slot for all app services that are running on top of this plan. If you choose the standard tier, you get 5 deployment slots on top. And if you pick Premium or Isolated, you get up to 20 slots per app service. When using a non-production slot for deployment, let's say for staging, you can test any changes before you swap staging with production. And in addition, you ensure that all slot instances are ready or warmed up before being swapped into production. After a swap, the slot that had the staged app now has the former production app. Here you have the steps that happen during a swap. Settings from the target slot are applied to all source slot instances. This triggers a restart of source slot instances. The swap operation waits then until every instance in the source slot is ready to serve requests. And the routing rules are switched, directing traffic to the source slot. No copying of files or cloning or redeploying involved. This would take too much time. The target slot now has the app previously warmed up in the source slot. The settings from the source slot are applied to all target slots instances. And this may cause the target slot now to restart. We will put this theory into practice with a demo. In the first one, I will explain you how to route traffic to deployment slots, both manually and automatically. And in the second one, I will show you how to swap deployment slots with production. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a deployment slot for an existing app service and then how you can route traffic to that deployment slot. I have a Contoso HTML app service here, and if I open this up, it's a fairly fresh app service that I have created. It has a very simple HTML website deployed to it. It's running on Windows in East US region, but it hasn't have any, or I did not configure any deployment slots yet. However, every app service web app gets always this production slot automatically. This is where 100% of the traffic goes, as you can see here, and this is where we can find the actual content. So let me show you what that means. If I go back to the overview and I click that browse button, you can see here this is clearly an application or just an HTML website. You can see this is coming from the production slot. So just to illustrate what slot this is in here. And the URL for this is really just what we have configured, the name of the app service with the Azure Websites.net normal initial domain that we use in here. Now I want to develop a new version of that website. And for this, I don't want to interfere with the production slot, so I go and create an additional slot. I will click Add Slot. I will give this the name Staging. You can call it whatever you want, and it will be embedded into the name and the URL for your application. You can then decide to either clone the settings that you already have, like connection strings, application settings from the production slot into this one. But if you want to do start from scratch with the staging slot, that's fine too. I choose this option. I will not clone this. Now, when I click Add here, it creates an empty slot. Will not copy over this HTML website and anything else that is in the production slot. It will make a new empty slot ready for me to target with any deployment that I want to have. My idea now is to use this deployment slot to get my brand new staging version into this. And as I said, not interfere with production yet. So the slot is created to just show you that this is empty now and how you can actually go navigate to this. If I click this link to the deployment slot, it will open up this site that is now letting you configuring the app service slot. And you can tell it has its own URL. And in fact, it is completely separate, although it is a feature and part of that one app service, but it's an instance on its own. Now, what happens when I browse this? I don't see my HTML site. I see the normal app service placeholder that we always see when we create a new app service. And that is exactly what I was expecting. Now, I want to deploy a local version of my HTML website to this new slot. How can I do this? There are multiple ways of doing this. And I will show you this using a local terminal using an Ubuntu Linux. And in my Ubuntu version, I have here already my HTML website ready. So there are just a bunch of different files. Basically, it's just interesting that we have this index HTML in here. And if I show you this, what it would look like right now, then you can tell it's the same as before. If you can read this now unencrypted, but we will see then instead of production, it will say stage on that site once I have deployed it. And you can also see this then as a comparison. Now, how about we made the changes? I have turned this into a Git repository just to show you that there's nothing to commit or anything. It's all good. But now I need to tell Git locally where I want this to be pushed. And how can I do this? So I check the deployment center in here, and it is not configured for anything right now. So I can go and I want to do this now from the portal, but I can also do this on the command line basis. But I will choose this one to just show you what happens. I will turn this into a local Git source, which will make this ready for my application to work with any external. It's now specific for this slot, right? So I have done this for the production maybe before, but I didn't do this for this brand new slot. So I have to do this again. Allow source control management basic authentication. So I will enable this, save it. This allows me to interact with Git credentials that Azure gives me for this deployment slot and deploy the code to this. So let's go back to the deployment center. Now that I have changed this, I've set this up to local Git right now. I need to save this first, and then it will come back with the URL that is specific to this slot. You can tell here it has the name of the slot embedded. It's a normal Git clone URI. It's nothing specific. We just embed a Git server now in this setting here. So I need to have this URL. And what I will do with this is I will go and in my terminal, I will configure a remote for this specific Git repository. I will set the URL or the remote called Azure. That's one that I already created. Otherwise, I could create it still, and I will use this HTTPS URL for this. So just telling local Git where to deploy any of my codes. Now, go ahead and push this now, right? So we would normally say, okay, go ahead and push this now to the to Azure, to the remote Azure from the master branch, because that is what we have called this in this repository. Now, what happens when I fire this up? It's asking me for username. What username do I need to provide here? There are a couple of options, but by the default, when setting this up for local Git, I get already local Git credentials created for me. So I scroll down here, you can see it has a local Git username and a password. I did not choose it, did not create it, it was created for me. And this is running, or let's say this is provided for the application scope. So this is for the whole app service deployment slot. I could also change to a specific user scope and provide specific user and password combinations that I would like to use in here. But I want to all my team using the same credentials. So one way would be I copy this over into the terminal, provide the username. Then it asks obviously for the password, and I go in here and copy this password into this. And now it's pushing to get the code that I have. And the end result would be that in my deployment slot, I will then have the staging version of this. So let me just see. This is the production, this is staging, right? So where we had before, and I can just tell by the URL, and on the other hand, it has placeholder. What happens when I refresh this now? Yes, it shows me my new HTML website where I see now stage instead of production. And then I have my code there and my deployment slot is configured. How can I get this being used by users? Obviously, I don't want to have everyone on it yet. I would like to configure it first just for a few tests. So one way of doing this is to change the traffic configuration. And I cannot do this from the deployment slot itself. I have to go back to the app service instance. So I use the breadcrumb navigation here and I go back to the Contoso HTML slide, and that looks a bit different, and I can actually send or configure a setting here. So let's say I would like to just drive a small test here and divert 10% of the incoming traffic automatically to the deployment slot that I just created, the staging one. I have now 10% of the incoming requests going to the staging slot. And I can test it out if it works okay. I can run some telemetry monitoring and check what's going on. Now, of course, that will be difficult now to check if that's really working. So one way could be to use the URL now, refresh a couple of times, or I could create an in-private browsing session and maybe I will end up on the stage, maybe I will not. Because once I'm there and once that is established, I might not be able to do this. But what I can do instead all the time is you can use a specific header information and add it to your standard URL. So just look at this. I'm using here the normal URL. I'm not saying which stage which deployment slot I want to go for. And then I use XMS routing name and then provide the name of the slot that I want to point to. I want to go this request to. If I fire this up, it shows here that it turns to the staging slot. If I change this, I mean, I can just remove it now, but also let me just try and see what happens when I use production and it goes to production. So this would be a way of letting a certain subset of testers already go to one of your deployment slots manually instead of you're relying on that just random configuration. As you saw before, the default is always 100% goes to the production, 0% goes to the staging. You can change this also at any point in time. It's not rebooting your app services or anything. You can do this without interfering with any ongoing requests. You have now unlocked the power of slot swapping within Azure App Service. By grasping slot swapping techniques and traffic routing strategies, you are given what is required to deploy updates seamlessly and mitigate risk associated with production deployments. Transform your deployment workflows with Azure App Service deployment slots, ensuring seamless transitions between app versions for unmatched reliability and efficiency. Thanks for watching. Keep on learning.